They called you too sensitive, the problem child, the one who ruined the family. But what if you weren't the problem? What if your nervous system simply refused to normalize their toxicity anymore? Breaking a generational curse isn't a victory lap. It's a brutal, lonely withdrawal. Let's dissect the psychology of the cycle breaker. You finally did it. You set the boundary, or maybe you walked away completely. And logically, you know it was the right choice. You did it to protect your peace, your mental health, and your future. So why does it feel like you are dying? Why does the guilt sit so heavy in your chest that it physically hurts to breathe? Society has a very specific, unforgiving script for family. Blood is thicker than water, but she's your mother. He's still your father. These phrases are weaponized against you, making you feel like a traitor for simply choosing your own survival. But here is the psychological truth that no one tells you. When you break away from a toxic family system, you are stepping into a terrifying state of voluntary orphanhood. You see, you aren't just losing the people who hurt you. If that were the case, walking away would feel like pure, unadulterated relief. What you are actually experiencing right now is profound, overwhelming grief. You are mourning the death of a phantom. You are grieving the family you deserved, but never actually had. You are mourning the parents who were supposed to protect you, the safety you were supposed to feel, and the unconditional love that was always dangled just out of your reach. Grieving someone who has passed away is deeply painful, but society understands it. They bring you food, they offer condolences, they give you grace. But grieving living people who are still out there, probably telling the rest of the family that you are the crazy one? That is a very specific, agonizing type of disenfranchised grief. You are mourning in absolute isolation. For your entire life, your brain was conditioned to believe that chaos, emotional neglect, and manipulation were normal. But as a cycle breaker, you possess a rare psychological trait: high self-observation. You were the first one to realize a terrifying truth. What is familiar is not always healthy. You woke up, but to survive in that family system before you woke up, you were forced to play a role. Maybe you were the good child who sacrificed your own boundaries to keep everyone else calm. Maybe you were the fixer who acted as the emotional dumping ground for adults who refused to regulate themselves. Or maybe you were the peacemaker, walking on eggshells for decades just to prevent the next explosion. When you break the cycle, you don't just leave a physical environment. You have to actively kill off that survival identity. You have to let the compliant child die so that the authentic adult can finally breathe. Shedding a skin you've worn your entire life is terrifying. It leaves you feeling raw, exposed, and deeply empty. But I need you to hear this. That emptiness you feel right now, that isn't a sign that you made a mistake. That emptiness is the space you are finally making to figure out who you actually are outside of their trauma. You are not ungrateful. You are molting. Let's talk about the guilt. The crushing, suffocating guilt that hits you the moment you finally say no. You set a boundary, maybe a very small one, and suddenly you feel like the most selfish, horrible person on earth. Why does protecting yourself feel like a crime? To understand this, we have to look at the core conflict happening inside your brain right now. It is a brutal war between two opposing forces: blind loyalty and self-preservation. In a healthy family, loyalty and self-preservation coexist peacefully. But in a toxic family system, they are mutually exclusive. To be loyal to them, you have to betray yourself. And to protect yourself, you have to commit what they consider the ultimate betrayal. You feel selfish because you were actively conditioned to believe that boundaries are acts of aggression. Since childhood, you were taught that your worth was entirely tied to your compliance. If you were quiet, accommodating, and absorbed their negative emotions without complaining, you were good. The moment you asserted a need of your own, you were difficult. So, when you finally draw a line in the sand as an adult, your nervous system panics. It sends out a massive guilt signal, not because you are actually doing something wrong, but because you are breaking the unspoken rule that kept you safe as a child. Never be an inconvenience. This brings us to a very painful trap that highly empathetic cycle breakers fall into: the empathy trap. Because you are deeply self-aware, you probably understand exactly why your parents or family members are the way they are. You know about their own unhealed trauma. You know they had a terrible childhood, that they were raised by emotionally stunted people, or that they survived terrible things. But here is a hard psychological boundary we need to establish right now. Having empathy for someone's past does not mean you have to become the emotional trash can for their present behavior. Understanding why a snake bites does not mean you have to offer it your arm. You can hold deep compassion for the trauma that broke your family, while simultaneously refusing to let them break you. When you finally enforce this, when you stop playing the game by their rules, something very predictable happens. The family system attacks. When you begin setting boundaries, you aren't breaking your family apart. You are simply shaking a system that was fundamentally built on your emotional exploitation. Think of a toxic family like a fragile machine that runs on a very specific fuel: your silence and your compliance. The moment you stop providing that fuel, the machine starts sputtering and breaking down. But instead of looking at the machine, instead of looking inward and asking, why is this system failing? What are we doing wrong? The family will almost always point the finger at you. You become the scapegoat. You become the problem. They will label you as divisive, arrogant, or claim you are being brainwashed by therapy. They have to demonize you. Because if you aren't the villain in their narrative, they have to face the terrifying reality of their own toxic behavior. Their fragile egos simply cannot survive that level of accountability. So, if your family is currently lashing out at you, giving you the silent treatment, or making you the bad guy because you walked away, take a deep breath. Their anger is not a sign that you made a mistake. Their intense resistance is actually the ultimate psychological proof that your boundaries are finally working. They always called you too sensitive, or maybe they told you that you just overthink everything. But here is the stark psychological reality. Your nervous system didn't just randomly decide to be sensitive. It was forced to evolve into a highly calibrated, hyper-vigilant threat detection radar just so you could survive in your own home. When you grow up in an environment where moods shift without warning, where a heavy sigh, a slammed kitchen cabinet, or a specific tone of voice immediately signals impending danger, your brain is forced to adapt. You develop extreme self-observation. You find yourself constantly scanning the room, reading micro-expressions on people's faces, and frantically censoring your own words and reactions before you even have them. You are chronically exhausted because your brain is running a background program of survival 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It takes an immense, unquantifiable amount of neurological energy to constantly calculate exactly how to exist without accidentally setting someone off. Because of this, one of the most agonizing battles you fight as a cycle breaker is happening entirely inside your own mind. You are constantly second-guessing your own reality. You lie awake, asking yourself, was that comment actually manipulative? Or am I just reading way too much into it? Are they really toxic? Or am I actually the one who is the problem? This is the brutal intersection of intuition and trauma. Your intuition, your deep, primal inner knowing, is telling you that something is fundamentally wrong, that you are being mistreated and you need to get out. But your trauma response, specifically years of chronic gaslighting, has actively programmed you to doubt that very intuition. You have been systematically taught that your perception of reality is fundamentally flawed. Unlearning that is a monumental task. You have to literally rewire your neurobiology to trust yourself again. You have to learn the difficult difference between hypervigilance, which is a fear based on the ghosts of the past, and intuition, which is a truth based on the reality of the present. And doing this internal work brings us to the coldest, hardest part of waking up, the sheer, breathtaking loneliness of it all. You are likely the very first person in your entire family lineage to ever sit in a therapist's chair. You are the first one to point directly at the elephant in the room. You are the first one to bravely say, the way we treat each other is not normal, and it stops with me. When you do that, you don't just become the scapegoat. You become an alien speaking a language they simply do not want to learn. You are trying to have mature conversations about boundaries, accountability, and emotional regulation with people who are fiercely committed to misunderstanding you. Because truly understanding you would require them to look in the mirror and face their own unhealed wounds. The isolation you feel right now is profound. You are grieving the loss of your family, yes, but you are also grieving the agonizing realization that they would rather lose you entirely than do the work to change themselves. That is a devastating truth to swallow. But this loneliness, as painful as it is not a punishment. It is the necessary, quiet space required for you to finally hear your own voice after a lifetime of being forced to drown it out. Let's talk about a secret that very few trauma survivors are willing to admit out loud. You finally escape the toxicity. You do the internal work, you heal, and you finally attract a healthy, safe, emotionally available partner or a solid group of friends. And instead of feeling overjoyed, you feel incredibly, undeniably bored. You might even feel a sudden, irrational urge to start an argument or run away just to feel something. If this is happening to you, please don't judge yourself. You are not self-sabotaging, and you are not ungrateful. You are experiencing what psychology calls the peace paradox. Perhaps the most terrifying legacy of family trauma is that it doesn't just hurt your feelings, it fundamentally reprograms your brain's reward center. When you grow up in a toxic environment, love is never consistent. It is a terrifying, chaotic roller coaster of extreme highs and extreme lows. You get screamed at or heavily criticized, which floods your body with the stress hormone cortisol. Then, eventually, there is a tearful apology, a guilt trip disguised as love, or a brief period of extreme affection. This sudden shift floods your brain with dopamine. Over the years, your nervous system becomes chemically addicted to this intense cycle. You literally become hooked on the biochemical high of making up after a disaster, of surviving the chaos. So, what happens when you meet a truly healthy person? A healthy person is consistent. They do what they say they are going to do. They don't scream, they don't give you the silent treatment, and they don't play mind games. To a normal brain, this consistency is safety. But to your traumatized nervous system, this consistency feels like a flat line. Your brain is desperately waiting for the other shoe to drop, and when it doesn't, it interprets that calm as a dangerous lack of passion. You have been systematically programmed to mistake anxiety for love. Those butterflies you thought you felt in past toxic relationships? That wasn't romance. That was your primal threat detection system screaming at you to run. Now, you are in completely uncharted territory. You are having to learn emotional skills that most people learned in childhood, and it feels incredibly awkward. You are learning how to communicate a need without being passive-aggressive. You are learning how to have a disagreement without it escalating into a war. You are experiencing the profound, deeply confusing shock of bringing up a concern to someone and having them simply look at you and say, "You're right, I'm sorry, I will do better," without trying to turn the blame back on you. The first time that happens, your brain literally won't know how to process it. You might freeze. You might get defensive, waiting for the trap to spring. Because in your old family system, an apology was never just an apology. It was a manipulation tactic. It was a transaction. It takes a massive amount of conscious effort and a lot of self-compassion to teach your body that peace is not a threat. The boredom you are feeling right now in your healthy relationships is not a lack of love. That is the feeling of your nervous system finally, after decades of being on the battlefield, putting down its weapons. It is the feeling of resting. That boredom is actually the ultimate luxury. It is the quiet, safe space where true, sustainable love can finally begin to grow. We've talked about the physical distance, the boundaries, and the chemical withdrawal of your nervous system. But there is a much darker, much more intimate battleground we have to explore. It is the space between your own ears. When you make a mistake, maybe you burn dinner, you miss a deadline, or you accidentally say the wrong thing. What does the voice in your head sound like? Does it give you grace? Or does it immediately call you stupid, worthless, or a failure? I need you to realize something profound. That harsh, unforgiving voice is not actually yours. It is an echo. It is the internalized voice of your toxic family system, perfectly recorded and playing on a continuous loop inside your mind. The ultimate tragedy of childhood trauma is that eventually, the abusers don't even need to be in the room anymore. They have successfully programmed you to abuse yourself on their behalf. This brings us to the most crucial, transformative phase of breaking the cycle: reparenting. Society often treats the inner child like a cute, abstract cliché, but in neuropsychology, it is a very real, tangible phenomenon. You are a fully grown adult navigating the world, but your nervous system is still housing a terrified, hyper-vigilant child who is desperately waiting for someone to come and protect them. Because your biological family system was incapable of providing that safety, The universe has handed the baton to you. You have to step up and become the exact adult that you desperately needed when you were small. Reparenting means deliberately turning down the volume on that internalized toxic critic and actively cultivating a new, fiercely compassionate inner voice. It means that when you drop a glass on the kitchen floor and it shatters, you don't freeze in terror waiting to be screamed at. Instead, you consciously take a deep breath and you tell yourself, "It's just a glass. You are safe. I am not going to yell at you. Let's clean it up." If you have children of your own, you probably already understand the agonizing beauty of this. Every single day, you are looking at your kids and actively choosing to give them the patience, the emotional regulation, and the unconditional love that you were starved of. You are quite literally using your own grief to build a psychological fortress for them. But even if you never have children, you are still required to build that fortress for yourself. And this is where a massive psychological roadblock appears. A lot of cycle breakers become incredibly angry and exhausted right here. They think, "Why do I have to do all this work? I didn't break myself. They broke me. Why is it my job to fix it?" It is incredibly unfair. But we have to make a stark, unapologetic distinction between taking the blame and taking responsibility. Taking responsibility for your healing. Choosing to regulate your emotions. Choosing to establish healthy boundaries. Choosing to endure the peace paradox. Does not mean you are accepting the blame for your past. You did not ask for your trauma. You did not deserve to be neglected, manipulated, or made to feel small. What happened to you is unequivocally not your fault, but your healing is your responsibility. Because if you refuse to take responsibility for your healing, you will inevitably end up bleeding on the people who did not cut you. Healing is not a magical eraser that deletes your painful history. Healing is a quiet, radical rebellion. It is the daily, conscious choice to look in the mirror, face the wounded parts of yourself, and finally say, "They didn't know how to love us right. But I am here now, and I will." The tears, the profound isolation, and the sheer psychological exhaustion you are enduring today, that is the exact price you are paying in full for the freedom of generations that haven't even been born yet. As we reach the end of this, I need to give you one final, crucial piece of grace. Healing is not a straight line. It is incredibly messy. You are going to have days where you react out of trauma. You are going to have moments where you lose your temper, or where the loneliness becomes so crushing that you feel an intense, desperate urge to crawl back to the familiar chaos. When you take a step backward, your inner critic is going to tell you that you failed. But a step backward is not a failure. It is simply a symptom of unlearning decades of heavy survival programming. You see, toxic family systems demanded absolute perfection, and they punished human error with emotional withdrawal or rage. Breaking the cycle does not require you to be a perfect, fully healed human being. Breaking the cycle simply requires the courage to repair. It is the ability to look at yourself, or your partner, or your children, and say, "I reacted poorly. I was wrong. I am sorry, and I am going to do better." That right there? That ability to repair without defensiveness, without shifting the blame? That is the ultimate emancipation. Your greatest success in this lifetime will probably not be measured by the amount of money you make, the title on your resume, or the accolades you collect. Your greatest, most monumental success is the quiet reality that the next generation will not have to spend the rest of their adult lives recovering from their childhood. The generational trauma, the emotional abuse, the silent treatments, the manipulation, and the neglect. It ends here. It ends with you. You are the filter for your bloodline, and you are doing the work that your ancestors were too terrified to do. If you are walking this incredibly lonely, incredibly brave path right now, I need you to know that you are not alone in the dark. Please, leave a comment below and share your experience as a cycle breaker. Tell us your story. Tell us what made you walk away. Because your comment might be the exact validation that someone else needs tonight to finally choose their own peace. And if this video helped you understand your own mind a little better, please hit the subscribe button. We are building a safe community here for deep psychological analysis and real trauma recovery, and I would be honored to have you join us. Take a deep, slow breath. You are doing the hardest, most beautiful work in the world. You are safe now. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.